So let's go ahead and we'll do a new composition. So I'll just do a new comp. And I'm going to just do, how small are we here? So we'll do HD. So I'm just going to do 1280 by 720. And I'll do it 24 just so that it's a little less. Creepy. All right. So we've got this. So we've got our comp, and we'll just call this one first comp. All right. So what we'll do, let's set up a little background here. I'm going to just do a new layer, just a solid. Let's pick maybe a little light blue, barely a hint, something like that. It'll automatically default at our comp size. If not, just click this guy, make comp size, and you'll know it's the right size, and it'll come in. I'm going to go ahead and move this down to fit up to 100% so we can see what's going on. And I like to turn on my title action safe right here. There's also your grid if you want to have your grid online to line things up, but I kind of like the title action safe just because I'm used to video side of things, so it gives me enough, and it gets me a nice center point to try and know when things are sort of centered and whatnot. So in the old days, this was where you'd want any action to happen because of tubes. Still, if there's a TV tube, and even on LCDs, depending on the quality, you might lose some of this, so that was about 10%, and that was your action safe. So anything important had to happen inside this first border, and then your second one was your title safe, and anything that happened, anything you wanted to show up on screen would be in here if it was, if you needed a title to really show up, because there was a good chance this area was never going to be seen, and sometimes even some of this could get eaten into. So if you had a crappier TV back in the day and, someone would put their little buzz thing down in the corner, it might get cut off on some TVs. So that's where title safe came from. So we've got our pale blue solid. Let's go ahead and throw in a little text. So we can go ahead and do a new layer, do some text, and we'll make a little happy birthday message to someone. So just click in here and just do our happy. I'm going to highlight that, and what do we have here? Good Lord, it's so tiny. So I'm going to do a Helvetica. Let's do a condensed bold, and we'll scrub them up. Okay, that's cool. And then in paragraph, I'll just put him on center. And let's make him, just give him a blue color, violet, something nice. All right, we'll go a little bigger. So I'm going to throw it up to about 120. You can use whatever you want. This is just a quick. All right, so we'll get that guy. He's in here. And we'll do another. So that one will default at that. If we just use our text tool, do the same thing. So let's do birthday. And let's make that guy just a condensed. And I don't have it. So let's just make it bold. Oops, sorry. Bold. And we'll bring him down about 90. All right. Let's get him over here too. And let's take him and get him a little more in the blue realm. That's kind of cool. All right, so just something there. On our background, I'm going to turn these two guys off. It's kind of a boring background, just flat. So you could put a gradient in there, like a circular gradient if you want. Something I always like to do is just throw a light on here. That way you can sort of affect quickly how that's going to look. So what I'll do is just do a new layer, and we'll do a light. And spotlight's fine, color's fine, everything here by default. I'm going to go ahead and, we don't need cast shadows for this, so this is just for our background. But I'm going to hit OK. And yeah, it's going to tell me that. So now it comes in. It's not in the center. It's kind of always in a weird spot. But this light isn't going to do anything right now. So onto the solid, because the solid's not a 3D layer. So to turn on the 3D layer, I just hit my switches modes here. And this little column right here is 3D. So if you're ever trying to do something with lights, there's always a couple things. Make sure if you want shadows to cast, the light needs to have shadows turned on. Also, your object needs to have cast shadows turned on. So just so you know, and 3D layers are the only layers that can receive light or receive shadows. So that's a lot of times while you want to do a pre-comp, if you take a bunch of things and you've got them all moving and you want them all to cast a shadow together, if you take that and make it a comp, then make just that comp 3D, then it'll cast a shadow together. So that we'll go through all that stuff. But that's sort of one of the reasons you'll want to pre-comp things. All right, so on this one, we'll make sure that's a 3D now. Now we can see the lights affecting it. So I'm going to go ahead and go back to my light, and I'm going to hit P so I can see my position. And on these guys, once it's 3D, you've got all three of your axes. So Y is your up and down, X is your left and right, and then Z is your forward and back in space. So I'm going to go ahead and just sort of nudge this one. Oops, nope. Hit my light. That'll be the thing you can always, so make sure you're on the X. I'm going to nudge them over. I'm going to get my light kind of in the center, just as close as I can. Making sure to be careful on those axes because you'll grab your background. And then we also have the point of interest. That's where the light shines. So that's the direction of the light, where it's going to, etc. So we'll just take that guy, nudge him in. So now my light's pretty much shining straight down on my background. And that's what I want. And now I can just take my Z space, click and drag. I'm going to pull it out so we get a more of a sort of a vignette look. And again, you could change that, animate that over time if you want. But once I have this set up, I kind of like that look. Cool. Now those two, since we don't really want to worry about that, that's all I'm going to have on my background. Yeah.
Okay. Maybe ask me
No, it's fine.
But, so the light worked like that on that screen because you made the solid
3D, yeah. So if I turn that off, you can see it goes purely white again.
Okay.
So the only way a light will affect anything is if what it's trying to affect is a 3D layer.
All right.
So if you've got if you got a light in there and you're trying to cast a shadow, that won't work. So if we did, like, turned on our text here, so happy, select happy. If I try and, right now, if I turn my light, I think, let's look at its, turn off its transform, so it's light options. If we look at it, color, radius, and I'm going to roll down here to cast shadow, make that on. So it should be casting a shadow. It's not doing anything. So I'm like, what's going on here? So now we could go to, so I go to my happy, look at that guy. Now if I make him a 3D layer, he should cast a shadow. Still no shadow. So let's go and look at happy. Oh, sorry, you're right. Happy, still no shadow. So if we roll down here on happy, go to our material option. So once you make it a 3D layer, it's got materials. So right here, when I roll down material options, I know this is a lot. If you haven't done it, it's just something, this will be quick to go through, but cast shadows, turn that on. We're still not getting anything, okay? Reason is that this is on the same plane as our background as it stands. But if I take this Z and I roll them up, should be. Oh, we turned off the 3D on that. That's why. Boom, there it is. So again, there's a lot of things that can be weird when you're dealing with 3D, and it's 2.5D in After Effects. But there's happy. If we move happy around, the shadow will move with it as, you can see the light doing its thing. If you move it up and down in space, etc. So we don't want that in 3D at this point. Now that'll start, it'll give you a little bit of a render hit as you're doing this stuff. But that's just sort of to get the idea. Make sure your material is casting shadows, or your object's casting shadows. Your material is, receiving, your object's receiving, and the light is casting shadows. So all of those things can hit you. Make sure they're all 3D layers. So again, turn off 3D on happy. It's back to nothing. It didn't. And it'll reset. Just like if you ever click, once you're setting keyframes and you, so say if I go to position here. If I hit this stopwatch and I set my keyframes and you turn off the stopwatch, it always clears all your keyframes. So remember that. It's not like it just turns them off for now. It clears them. So if you do that accidentally, hit that undo right away. Because otherwise you're going to be down the line and go, oh, and it just sucks. So there's no way. So that's the same thing with 3D layers. If you turn it off, if you've moved it around in 3D space and you turn it off, it's not popping back like it did when we turned it back on. Okay? So I'm just going to do undo. Get back to before he was 3D. Happy. He's in normal space. All right, cool. So now I've got it back just where he was. The only 3D layer we have is this guy. We've got our vignette. We've got our light. And I'm never going to, I love the way this background looks. I'm never going to touch it. So I'm going to go ahead and make this guy a pre-comp just so we can keep it on its own and lock it. So what I'm going to do is select these two guys, light 1 and pale blue solid, shift select. I'm going to right click and pre-compose. So all this is doing is it's looking at what we've got in those layers. So however, these could be animated, and we'll do something in a second that are animated. Whatever you have happening, it'll take those objects you select, make them in their own composition. So now you can move that composition along on its own, or scale it together, make it a 3D object together, rotate it together, all that. Anything you can do with one keyframe instead of keyframing everything individually if you've got 7 things. So that's one way a pre-compose is a good thing. So I'll go ahead and pre-compose. What do you want to call it? We'll call it background. And move all attributes in new composition. That's cool. If you want to open it, you can hit open new, but I'll just say okay. So now what we get, background up here, it's a comp. If we double click it, it'll open up as its own with these two guys in it. And I'm going to go ahead and close that guy, reopen first comp. So there's first comp. We still have background in here. You can see by its icon, it's a composition. If we roll it down, it just has its normal options. So if we wanted to move this guy, the background, the light moves with it. It's doing its thing. So that's kind of the cool thing about a pre-comp in one way. So I'll undo. All right. So now we've got that guy. I'm going to go ahead and lock it. Fruit fly. Because we're not going to move it. That'll help us also grab other things. So now let's go back to our happy and birthday. Let's bring these in a little bit. So just some quick refresher on animating. Let's put happy on top of birthday because it just looks nicer in the timeline. So happy, let's have this guy. Let's move ahead. Well, if you have your normal keyboard, you can get your page down to move forward a frame, or shift page down to move forward 10 frames. All right, so we're going to go forward about 10 frames. And I'm going to go ahead, and this is where I want happy to end up. So I'm just going to go ahead and say, I'm going to hit P so I get my position keyframe with happy selected. And then I'm going to set that keyframe where it is. And then let's just roll it back to the beginning and move happy off the screen. So I'm going to make this, where do I have to go? 33% maybe so we can see it well? Okay. So I'm going to move it off screen, and I'm just going to hold shift. Wait, undo, hold on. Doop. So as I'm moving it, hold down shift so it moves in a straight line, and we'll just have happy come in over those 10 frames, nestle in. All the frames right now are linear keyframes, so they just come in and stop, right? There's no easing yet. We'll talk about ease. You guys remember easy ease and ease in, easy in out? Okay. So on that, we'll have it come in. Boom, happy. Let's also have it, let's go back out here, and why not give it a little, let's give it a little scale. So we'll hit S to see our scale. I'm going to go ahead and bring it down maybe to, let's just do 50. All right, and I'm going to go ahead and shift and hit T for opacity. Did you guys know all that before? Like you could just hit the S. So S is scale. If you just want to see scale underneath, S is scale, P is position, T is opacity, R is rotation, and anchor point, maybe A. I can't remember. What is it? Let me see. Anchor point is A. There you go. If you want to add your other ones, you can do Shift T, Shift S, Shift P. If you want to just see what has keyframes on it, it's U. So if you hit U, only what keyframes are available. So right now we've only set position, so that's what we've got. So I'm going to hit that S again, Shift S. I've scaled it up here, but I haven't set a keyframe. So now we've got that, and we'll roll it forward to that other keyframe. Again, you can hit these little arrows to jump to your next keyframe. And now we'll go ahead and make that back up to 100. All right. And there's also, just remember, you could keyframe your point size as well as your scale. So it's one of those things that things can get really wonky if you start animating one and then you forget and then you're scaling and then you go, oh, I just want to take this down to 80, but it's not 80 anymore because you've scaled it on top of this size. So just remember that kind of thing, because if we go through here, if I scrub back, you can tell over here it's not changing my point size. You're just scaling it relative to it. Does that make sense? Okay, so just remember that stuff. You probably already, sorry if I'm repeating things you know, but it's a refresher. All right, so you come in, we got happy, we've got birthday. All right, so happy is fine. Let's do a little opacity too. Let's get that in there. I'm going to start out at Shift P, so I have a keyframe to look at. Go forward. Here we're going to be at 100%. Perfect. And let's scrub it back, and we'll bring it down from 0. So now it'll fade in, scale in. Oh, this is going to be so slow, but that's okay. There we go. So let me reset my, I'm going to grab my little work area here. RAM preview. And that is super slow, so what we'll do is we'll grab, this is where the U comes in handy. Hit U once to roll it all up, hit U again so I can see all my keyframes, grab them all, and actually just grab these last 3. And we'll take them down to about, let's get it so where we can see some seconds. There we go. So now let's move this to about a little less than a second. That should be a little more snappy. And bring this in. That's good. We don't anyone to be too excited about their birthday. All right. So then birthday, what can we do here? Let's go ahead and use a text effect. Now, there's all these effects and presets. If you use these guys, try and make it your own. It's one of those things. Some of them are super cheesy. Did you look through these earlier when you? Okay, so some of them are pretty cheesy, but I mean, some of them are just a quick way to get started. Animation presets. I'm going to roll down here, and let's look for the text. And you've got all these options. So I'm going to do animate in, fly in from bottom. That sounds fun. So we'll do that. Grab it, drop it on birthday. Now automatically, wherever your timeline was, or your time, what is the official word? Your scrub thing, this indicator, current time indicator, the CTI. Wherever the CTI was is where it's going to start. So at this point, what we want to do is, so we're going to want that to happen. Let's roll that down and just see where we're at. So birthday, if we just hit U, it'll show us what has keyframes. So there's a start and an end, all right? So that start is here. So we want it to happen. So happy hits, we'll probably want birthday to be starting around here. So let's grab that keyframe, scrub it in. If you hold shift, it'll snap to your timeline, time indicator, your CTI. So we've got this guy, and then we can go ahead and change our, see where our position on this guy. I don't use these very often. I just thought I'd show you guys one. So we should be able to just move it. Let's see what happens, though. I think it's going to weird out. It is. So let's move our point of interest back to where we want it. Now, hopefully, let's see what we got. Here we go, position here. And that should do it. So that's our start position. And there we go, popping right in there. So our final, let's go back to our birthday. Let's bring this guy up. So he's nestled in there under happy. Again. So now we've got our RAM preview. All right, so now position though, that's a little whacked. That's fine, let's stop it. Get birthday. That'll get us in there. And then let's do where it starts. So that position again on this guy, let's bring him down a little. There we go. Now he should just come in from nowhere. Happy birthday, hooray. All right, and then we'll go forward a little bit. We'll just have happy. God, this is tiny. All right. On birthday, let's say let's just fade him away. Let's do our T for opacity. Give him a keyframe, 100%. Move a little bit forward, and we'll have him go down to 0. And on happy, let's give it another little exciting preset. Animate out. How about fade out slow? All right. So that should be good. So that'll just fade out slow. You can see the little... It's kind of weird that happy's after, but who cares? So fade out slow, we got that going on, and just make sure, hit U. Get a little more room for our timeline here. There we go. And happy birthday. All right, cool. So let's bring this so it's a little faster. All right, so we've got that guy. That's kind of all we want for that. So now we can pre-comp these two. So we can say, all right, happy and birthday. We want those guys to be their own thing. Again, right-click, works. Pre-compose. Move all attributes to new composition. Perfect, thanks. And I didn't rename it, so we'll just go ahead and right-click, rename. You can also hit return to get to that, but sometimes I'll hit another letter and create, so I just do right-click, rename, just so I know I'm really renaming it. And that is happy birthday. All right, someone had asked about numbers going up, so let's throw another one. So we got happy birthday, that's a comp, do-do-do. So let's go back to our main comp, first comp, turn that guy off, happy birthday for now. And what we can do is let's do a shape layer. So we can go over here. Now, if you're doing any of your tools, if you have a layer selected and you use one of your tools, it'll create a mask. If you don't have a layer selected, it'll create a shape layer. Do you guys know that? Okay, so you can bring things in from Illustrator. If you paste them into a layer, it'll become a mask. If you open an Illustrator file, it should come in as a shape layer. Is how the difference of those guys are. And you can animate your points, etc., etc. So we're just going to go ahead and do a ellipse tool. I'm going to click close to my center here. Option or Command Shift on this instead of Option. And I'm just going to bring them out. That's pretty good. Let me scale it down a little bit. I'm going to scale that guy. Okay, cool. And what I'm going to do is turn on my happy birthday again just so I can pick some colors. Zoom in so where they are. So if I want to grab those colors. So let's use the same thing. So I'll go for my fill up here on my shape layer. Just go ahead and get that. Use my eyedropper. Grab my little violet color. Cool. And then let's do a stroke. And we'll grab that blue. A lot of times I'll have all my colors as a separate layer, like my swatches, and then that way you can just leave those on up in the corner and grab them. It's just a little thing I do. All right, so then if we grab this guy, crank it up a little bit, let's get a little bit of a larger stroke on that, and that should be cool. And this will be, I'm going to name that circle. Call it age circle. And I'll turn off my happy again. So we've got age circle, and I'm going to go ahead and let's do a new layer, layer new, solid. And this is going to be our age numbers. So new layer, calling it age numbers. The color doesn't really matter. And then there's an effect, in effects and presets. I'm just going to go ahead and look in number, type in number, and there it is. It's an old one. It's been around forever. It's a little 8-bit. So numbers, and we'll drag that onto our age numbers, and it'll ask you a few things. So what font you're going to use. We've been using Helvetica here, and I'm going to go ahead and do a little bold. Let's do condensed bold. That'll be nice. And then horizontal alignment, I'll do left and hit OK. Now you can get back in and change those. It's up here in your options. So if you ever want to get back to that, just hit options, and then you can change those because they don't show up inside your effect controls. So now we've got this little number here. I'm just using my scroll wheel. And we can grab that guy, that age numbers, and move him around. So over here you've got value, offset, random. So that is what we're going to set our number to or from. You've got whether you want a number with leading zeros, a time code, 30 frames a second, time code, 25 frames a second, 24 frames a second. So that should automatically move with you. So if you ever need to put time code on something, just so you can look and see, right there's that magic, even though that doesn't seem right. 20. So time, and you can animate all these to the ranges you want, dates, etc., etc. So we're just going to do a number, and we're going to get rid of the zeros. So I'm going to say no decimal places, and we're going to start. I'm going to start it at 0. And let's do we'll just do a fill color of white, or almost white. Another thing is with broadcast, back in the broadcast days, if you're broadcast, there still is, as far as I know, there's still a limit to how white can be. There's a broadcast gamut, and pure white was too hot. It would blow out, it would bleed a lot. Red's the same thing. Pure red will bleed. And you can see that sometimes when people have something like a lot of red on the screen. It looks like it's crawling and expanding a lot. So usually around 95, 90% white is great to use. It just won't be as crazy. So I just try and get in there somewhere. I don't know for sure if it still is an issue. It probably is, but it may not be. I could just be old, and that's that. All right, so we've got this guy, and we want to size this up. So we'll grab him, bring him in, displace him, and we'll probably go to like 21. So let's figure out what we're going to do here. So we're going to make it, this is going to be someone's 21st birthday. So we'll just say, all right, on age numbers, we want it to go up in about, we'll set a keyframe about there, and we'll move these around. So let's set for value offset random or whatever right here. We're going to go ahead and hit a keyframe there, and that will be at 21. So to 21, and we'll hit a keyframe. And let's get them lined up. And now if we go back in time, we'll just go to the beginning, and we'll set that down to 0. And it does, or I wonder if that's because we're in. Let me center it and see if that helps. I think it's still going to jump. That's better. I mean, they do jump around a little, but it's not perfect. All right, so we've got that going on. So now if we hit play, it's going to count up. Do. Exciting. You could have a little scale at the end to show your, a little punctuation, but that's fine for us. Let me zoom back out. All right. So now we've got that counting up, and what we'll want to do, let's have that guy swoop in and as the other stuff's playing. So we'll turn this stuff back on. Numbers, I'm going to go ahead and get my entire range here. I'm going to pull down my numbers range, the actual length of it as a clip down, just so we have that in there. All right, cool. All right, so now if we're going to move in, so let's just scrub along, see what's going on. So happy birthday comes in, and then it starts to go away. So maybe right where that happy maybe we want that to be at, yeah, so maybe around 15, somewhere around there before it's gone. So let's set a position keyframe. And then I'm going to scrub back here, and let's just move him. Oh, undo. So this would be where we could pre-comp these guys. Let's do our circle. So I'm going to undo. I thought I pre-comped. Sorry, guys. So age, circle, and numbers. Let's do another pre-comp, so we don't have to set 2 keyframes. Pre-compose. And you can always do a new comp. Build it. It's the same thing. And, if you build it in a new composition. So this is our age numbers. And now we've got this composition. Starts counting here. So again, we could say, where do we want it to come in? Happy birthday. And we want it to hit right as that's fading out. So that sounds good. Position. Set it. Move back. Yeah, let's just grab them off. Happy birthday. And there we go. Happy birthday. Woo! All right. So that's happening there. So now we've got our pre-comps. We've got all our things. It's all together if we wanted to change any of them. That was a really weird thing to do, but I don't know why I did it. So there it is. Let's do a RAM preview. This guy, let's make it fit to. And oh, not quite enough. Wow, that was weird. Yeah, usually on the number keyboard, if you hit 0, it's RAM preview, if you got a big keyboard. So I'm like, All right, so that's kind of a little bit, numbers counting up. Are we seeing them count up? Oh, they're already in there. What's going on? Let's see. Hold on. We got a problem. Houston. All right, so let's look at our numbers. What's happening here? I think it's because I changed my keyframes. So let's see. So we are counting up. Let's go back here. First comp. So it's already there. So what we're going to do is make sure we're at 0, because that's where he starts counting up. And now let's try that. Let's see if that'll work better. There we go. It's counting in, but I'm not hitting right. I want that last keyframe to hit about there. We can nudge a little bit. There we go. That should give us a little bit, and then we'll get a little counting in the mix. Let's run preview that. Whoa, that's a little fast. So it's not the most beautiful thing in the world, but it gets a lot of things across. So pre-comps, can see the advantage of them? Yes, no? All right, and again, if we wanted it to go 3D, we could take this whole thing. So this will be a quick judge of that. Stop. So if we wanted this whole little guy to become 3D, we could just turn on one 3D switch. Now again, to get it to cast shadows, we want to make sure that on its material options, it says cast shadows on, and then we need to move it away from the background a little. And what else are we missing? Oh, it might not, because now our light is in the background comp. That's why it's not doing it. So if we put this in the background, so a light in another comp, a nested comp, won't affect anything else in the scene, only in its own comp. Forgot to tell you that. All right? So that's where nested comps can get really insane. And there's also when you get into the whole rasterize. So this guy, if you've got a vector object, this little guy over here it'll tell you right here. So a vector, it continuously rasterizes. So you can scale something you bring in from Illustrator up. It'll continuously rasterize. Sometimes it'll really start to bog down your machine, but it's okay. And then that's what it does that. But for a comp, you can see it'll tell us it hits, hold on, it collapses all of your, are you going to tell me? Come on. It collapses your transformations. So if you've got that on, if something isn't working right, and sometimes it doesn't make any sense, and I wish I could really explain it, but there'll be times where you'll be like, what's going on? And turn that on, and then turn on a 3D layer, and then turn off a 3D layer, and then turn that off, and then all of a sudden it'll work, and you won't know exactly. Someone probably knows somewhere. But it's like a lot of these things have been screwy since version 3.1. So it's just, they just haven't done a rebuild. So, all right. So there's that. That's kind of a quick thing. Does that help? So that's pre-comps. Shapes. So we'll get into masks and mats in a bit. The number effects. All right. Let's talk about, let's do some quick tracking, because tracking is fun. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and close this guy. Go to my project. Delete it. I'm just getting rid of that stuff, just so I don't have enough room here to be scrubbing through everything. All right, so for this next one, let's go ahead. I'm going to go ahead and file, import, and I'm going to grab the AE refresh. I'm going to go ahead and grab the tracking folder and open that. All right, so it'll bring in the whole folder. If you grab a folder, it'll bring in the folder as a folder. If you need a new folder, you can always click down here and create a new folder. Can I undo that? I can't undo it, so I'm going to go ahead and just delete it. So a lot of times when I'm working, I'll set up a folder for like comps. I'll set up a folder for footage or video or audio. But that one's nested now because I put it in there. But so it's just a good way to stay organized. So those little folders, they're just for organization. But if you bring in a folder, it'll automatically knock everything in there for you. So we've got a couple things. We've got this knock PST, got a phone track video, which again, I have no light in this crappy apartment I live in, so sorry about that quality. We've got a track move. We've got a Who's PSD, and then we've got this sweet Wildebeest movie. So what we're going to do is let's grab the Wildebeest movie and grab it and drag it onto this comp icon. So anytime you do that, it'll automatically make your comp the length of the source clip. It'll make it the size of the source clip. It'll make your frame rate match the frame rate of the source clip. So if you've got a video that you know that's what you're putting all your effects on and everything, just drag it right to this little comp guy where you would click to make a new comp, and it will automatically set it up. So if we now go, we can see we have a comp Wildebeests because it just names it off of whatever the movie or object or whatever it was to do it. So this is a little art beats guy. So what we're going to do first is be illegal and get rid of our watermark. So what you've got a little clone tool up here. For something like this, it works great because it's very, it's all down here in the ground. It doesn't really matter. So what you're going to do is you need to have your it on its own layer. So double click that movie and it'll open up in its own little window. And now we can go ahead, I'm going to zoom in a little bit. Use my space bar to get my hand tool up here. And then, so that's a little too much. There we go. Just grab the clone tool and just hit Option to select, and then just paint this little guy out. And it'll paint, from this point on, it'll paint across your timeline. You don't have to do it every frame. It's going to hold this on here. Now, if you had something in motion, you'd probably have to redo it as you move through. But this guy doesn't go anywhere. He's just hanging out. So that works. There it is. Now, if we go back to our composition wildebeest, there it is. It's beautiful. They're walking by. So what we're going to do, these guys are going to start telling each other a knock-knock joke. So the first thing we'll notice is it's a little shaky, right? So probably someone's out there hand holding in the savannah or wherever they are, and they're a little nervous that maybe a cheetah is going to get them, so they're a little shaky. They didn't have time to set up a tripod. Understandable. So first thing we'll do is do stabilization. You guys want to talk about that? That was another thing I remember. So in Premiere we had the warp stabilizer, right? We've got the same thing here, but it's in the tracker. So if I go over to Window, Tracker, it'll pop up our tracker window. Now this window is where you do camera tracks, warp stabilizer, stabilize motion, track motion. Now the warp stabilizer is the same as After Effects. If we hit it, it'll run through, it'll analyze, it'll figure out its best solution, and then it'll do it. So let's go ahead and do that. So we've got wildebeest selected. We'll go ahead and hit warp stabilizer. It ignores masks and effects applied in the same composition. To honor them, apply them in a pre-comp. Okay, that's fine. We don't have to worry about this. Hit OK. It does the same thing. It'll analyze it. It'll show, and up here it'll give you your time. And there's another way you can do it, which I'll just tell you about, because we'll use trackers for other things. I just don't want to spend a lot of time. But you could do a tracker and like take one of these white dots or something that will be here, use that, and it'll analyze the motion of just that area and then adjust your track. But I think on this, it's pretty simple. The warp should do pretty good. There we go, 96.89, stabilizing. All right, so now let's see how it did. Looks pretty good. If you put something, usually I'll just put my pointer here to see if it's moving. Yeah, that's pretty solid. All right, warp stabilizer did the job. Doesn't look funky, so it looks good. All right, so now we've got that stabilized. If we roll down, we'll see we've got a warp stabilizer VFX, so it's in there. Now we want to do, what we're going to do is first is we're going to track this wildebeest's head, the front guy. So he's the one that's telling the joke, because he's keeping morale up in the rest of the herd. They're on a long journey. It's a circle of life, all that jazz. They're having fun. So on this guy, what we want to do, now we're going to use the tracker. Let me pull this up a little. Okay, so we're going to do track motion. And what will happen is when we hit this button, it's going to ask us a few questions. And then it'll give us two little boxes, and you put those, and you want to find a good contrast point, because it'll analyze the contrast between what's moving and what's not moving, and then it'll track it and try and analyze. Now, sometimes you'll get a bad track. You can always go back and move if things are rotating, but I'll tell you here, so that's just what's going to happen now. It's going to happen. All right, so it'll go back into your main movie, and you can see Art Beats is back, and it's still going to be wobbly. Once we get back out of this layer, it'll be fine again, but when it's tracking, it's looking at the original source before you've done anything to it, because if we tracked on top of a stabilization, if something happened, it could get out of whack and be weird. So just don't freak out when you're like, what's going on? So this is our track point. I'll move down a little. Let's zoom in a little bit. All right. So when you roll over it, when you get the little crosshairs, that's everything. And you'll see it gives you a zoom in. So what I want to do is find these horns. And I'm going to make it a little bigger because those horns are pretty specific. So this inner one is what you want it to track. And then the outer one is sort of how far you want it to search. Now you can go crazy, but you want them as close as possible for the least amount of time and also for the most accuracy. So that's a pretty distinct shape. I think it'll be fine. And now what we do is we go through, we say, okay, I want to hit my options though first. So options, what are we going to call it? This is going to be first. Oops. We'll call it first beast track, just so I really know what it is. And is that a 1? There we go. Tracker built in, that's what we have. Now you can choose whether you want to use luminance or RGB values. Luminance usually is a good thing, but if something is, they're just similar luminance values, but they're just colors are different, You can try RGB. I've never used saturation, but I mean, that would be kind of crazy if there's things and you're just trying to track off saturation, you could try it. Then you want to do, I'm doing this on this one because I know it changes a little bit maybe, so I'm going to go adapt feature on every frame. So what will happen there is it's going to go through and really think about it every time it moves. So instead of just taking our initial point and thinking it's not going to change the entire way through, this way what it does is it moves a frame and goes, all right, I'm checking you out again. All right, let's track you again. Let's track you again. Let's track you again. Instead of going, gotcha, track it. So because if it changes, like if someone moves and the shape changes, it's going to just go off into space and do something weird and crazy. And so, and on this, it's small. It's not going to take long. But if you are tracking something really complex and it takes 30 minutes to do that track, and then you come back and you're like, oh, but you can sit there and watch it. So then the other, this is the other option. So we've got, so I did adapt feature on every frame. Cool. For this, it won't be a big deal. But then stop tracking if confidence is below 80%. So if After Effects thinks we're getting down into the C range, you're no longer at a B minus, let's stop so that, you know, I can take a look at it and go, oh no, let me readjust this and retrack, back up a little, delete these. So what it'll do a keyframe every frame for that position. Okay, so we'll see how it works. All right, so we'll go ahead and hit OK now. I've got it named. Nothing happened. So what we have to do is hit this play button, analyze forward. So we hit that. It's tracking the horns. All right, and we lost a little bit at the end because he goes off, but it doesn't matter because we won't need his track at that point. So now we've got that track. If we roll down, we can see motion trackers. We've got first beast track. Cool. That's all I need. Now, what I'm going to do is track that while we still have this up. I'm going to create a null object. I could track it right to my little blurb that I want to happen, but if I do it to a null, then we can, it's a little easier because that's just an empty space in time, in space. Then we can just parent it to another object, and it's a lot easier than just applying all those keyframes. And if you want to change something, you've got to go back, find the tracker, reapply it. This way the null is always just a placeholder that you can link other things to. So I'm going to go ahead and create a null. So I'll do a layer, new, null object. So it's just a point in space. And we'll call this, knock null. All right, so that's cool. And let me go back to my comp. And you can see it's got a space, but you can resize this. But while I've got that selected down over here, so if I go to my wildebeest, am I going to get it back? So in wildebeest, I'm going to motion source, first beast track, pulled it back up. Now what I'm going to do is go to edit target, and this is what you want it to apply to. I'm going to do that knock null, or whatever you called it. So now if we roll back, go back into our comp, that guy, it's not doing it. Why are you not? So off wildebeest, we've got that track, first piece track. Oh, because I didn't apply, sorry. Okay, knock null, then make sure you hit apply. Apply. X and Y, so you've got options here, X only, Y only. So we want X and Y position, so it'll move along with his head going up slightly up and down. And now knock null should follow right along. So we hit space. So now this null object, I know it's got a big area, but you don't have to worry about it. You could resize that if you just want to make it look like a dot. You'll never see it. It doesn't render, but now we can see it just moving along. He's in there, locked in. So now if we wanted to, let's go ahead and get our second guy. So I'm going to roll in and go from the beginning. And this is the one, and we can see he changes. So you see as he goes along, he's 2 horns, then he's just 1, then he kind of looks at us, he's 2 again, and he's 1. So we want it to keep analyzing like, okay, that changed, but it'll come back. So we'll go ahead and do another one. So on wildebeest movie, we're going to do another track motion. New track point shows up, bring him in. Oops, I grabbed just the center there. Bring him over. This one fits nicely right in there, so that's good enough. I don't have to do anything else. That should track him fine. Then we do our options, so we can name it. We'll call it second track, or whatever you want to call, second beast track. Luminance is great. Turn on adapt feature on every frame. I'm going to say, hey, if your confidence is low, sure, that's great, and hit OK. Then again, hit that forward play button. It's going to analyze it. It's locking on pretty good. Cool. So now we've got that one. We can go ahead and create a new null. New null object under layer. And go ahead and rename that to who null. All right. And then we want to make sure we take it over here, edit target. So we've got second beast track, edit target, who null. And those are weird names, but it'll make sense. And then apply. X and Y, perfect. So now if we go to who null, we can see that it follows along just as well. I like making them small. That's just me. But he'll follow along the entire time and do that. So now we've got our movie. Let's go back to our comp. We're in our comp. I'm going to zoom out and get down here so we have a little more view. So now let's go ahead and bring in our project window, let's bring in our knock PSD. So I'm going to drop that down here. It's got our big knock knock. And let's just scale that down to say 20%. So I'm just going to hit S for my scale keyframe. Not set a keyframe, but just let's make it 25. See if that'll be fine. So and that's going to be on this guy. So what I want to do though is go all the way back, line him up to where I'd want it to be with him, and then let's go over and we're going to use our parent pick switch or pick whip or whatever they call them, and then we're going to go down to knock null. So it'll now take all the position frames from knock null, that little null, and apply it to this. So if we had multiple things now we wanted to follow along, you could position them all over and then just parent them to it, right? And that way we don't have to run a tracker for every other object and apply or copy keyframes and paste keyframes and just get crazy. All right, so now if we hit play, knock knock's moving along with it. It's got a little bit of a jitter. All right, but it's not going to be up there the whole time. He's got kind of comedic timing. He knows what's up. So we're going to come in here, and now let's go to our T for opacity, and we're going to go ahead and bring him down to 0. So he starts walking along, probably about a second. Let's give him a keyframe at 0. Move in a little bit. Bring him up to 100. Little knock knock. Just nudge him along. Another keyframe. And bring him back down to 0. That might be a little. So just check that out. We'll see. Just walking along. And then this guy about here. Let's get that who's there in the mix. So all we have to do is bring the who's PSD down. Scale him down to 25%. Now again, bring it all the way back so he'll track from the beginning where you think he'd be speaking from, so probably right about there. And then we'll go ahead and grab who's.psd and do the who null. So just click and drag onto that. And let's go ahead and bring his opacity down to 0. Knock knock. And then about here. Let's go ahead and set a keyframe. Nudge him forward a little bit. I was going to have another one say, shut up, you guys, but I figured this will be enough torture. So there we go. Knock knock, who's there? Move him forward. Fade him out. And there it is. So now What if we select this? Hold on. Can we do... If you do the little accent key, it'll bring up the big thing. So if we get this guy rolling... There it is. Amazing. So that's a simple sort of 2D track. What? Is that all right? Was that okay? So for you guys that are doing stuff that you want to track, that sort of gets, so contrast is key. That's the big thing. That's where you're going to find, you know, if you're trying to track something that's why when you see a lot of green screen things or special effects, they've got the little the crosses on there, right? Because that's what they're looking for, that contrast. So if you've got a lot of stuff with not a lot of contrast, it's going to be hard to track. You might have to do a lot of single keyframes. But you give it a shot and see where it is. So let's do a quick corner pin. And then we'll move from there. Well, wait, what time do we start? 11:15? Do you guys want to take a quick break, like 10 minutes?
Yeah.
You thirsty? Whatever? Okay, yeah. Let's do 10. Be back at 1 o'clock.
Oh, I was thinking about that. I'll let you know, actually.
All right. So I'm going to do the same thing here. Track point 4. Get close, zoom in. Again, at this point, we're just looking at contrast values, luminance values, contrast via luminance. So if we can get this just to be mainly the black and white, that's what's good about that. It'll track better. And then our last point, this should be a nice clean one. Now, in reality, what you can do is that if it starts drifting or if it's not quite, you can go through, and that's where this sort of on our tracker, we've got the thing of so you can analyze the entire thing forward or backwards, or you can just pick one frame at a time, forwards or backwards. So if something starts to get screwy, what you can do is stop. So mine will automatically stop after 80. If it seems it's like 80% chance it's wacky, it'll automatically stop when we set that up. But if you start to go, like at the end, if one just drifts off, you can easily go in, just go back to that point, select what's went wrong from that point over those keyframes. I'll show you where those are once we track it. Delete those and then then adjust your tracker again and just start tracking from that point again. So you can go that way, or if one gets out of whack, you can just bring it back and it'll save that keyframe. Because all it's doing is every frame it's setting a position keyframe for you. Now in this case, it's setting corner pin settings. So what it's going to do is just use the corner pin distortion on our video layer later, and then that's what will happen. Okay, so I'll zoom back out, and we'll do our track. So we've got our 4 track points. We've got our track point, so we're doing perspective corner. And I will just go ahead and analyze forward. Well, let's do our options just in case. So we'll call it phone track. And if you're doing a lot of tracks, it does make sense because otherwise it's going to be tracker 1, tracker 2, tracker 3, tracker 4, tracker 5, and you won't remember. So that's cool. We'll do luminance on this. I'm going to do that adapt feature on every frame just so it really checks, and stop tracking if it's below 80%, sure. Okay? And let's see what happens. So it's tracking, and it stopped. So it started to whack out already. Why? Let's look. Okay, so it's our top one. So I'm going to go ahead, move up. Why won't it? So we can see it went way off balance. So what I'm going to do is go back to my, oh, I wish I could have this up. I wonder if I can just pull that out. There we go. So if we go through, I'm going to go ahead and reset that. Oh, F that. Sorry. I thought I could just reset the tracker things. Let me do this real quick. My bad. You just got to F that recorded on the video. So that was the one that gave me problems. Yeah, Mocha will do a better job, but not everyone might have it, so I'm just throwing this for everyone because I know everyone will have this, and it's the way it used to be.
You were saying, right, that you can go back individually, and like if it screws up somewhere, you can fix it?
Right, you can go back and start from there. If it screws up again, we'll go ahead and do that and get it retracking again.
I'm just curious.
It's just basically just moving, because you can see when it's tracking, every one of those little bits is a keyframe. All right, so let's see. So we'll go ahead and phone track is fine. Luminance, adapt. Let's try it. That was better. All right. So I just had to get that one corner so it was really just seeing the black and white. All right, so now we've got our track. So it's the same kind of thing, except on this one, we want to, let me bring this window up. So on this one, what we can do is when we let's bring our phone track, or track movie MP4 in. So if we go to motion source up here again, track movie, that's where we did it. Not track movie, sorry, phone track. Then here we've got the current track is the phone track we just did. Now edit target, instead of this we do track move, hit OK, and move track move above because obviously it's not there and it doesn't. Oh, I didn't apply, sorry. So track move and then apply. It's a little off. Maybe we didn't start the, oh, maybe that's what it is. Hold on. Undo. I don't think my track move was set. So make sure you're all the way here when you bring track move down. So here we go. Track move. Put it on top. And then go over to our tracker. So we're looking for the motion source was phone track. The current track was phone track. Our target is track move. And we want to apply. All right, so we are a little off on this one. We'd have to probably go back and retrack. There it is. So just in the beginning, it fixed itself okay. Now, so if you have this on black, then what you could do is change your blending mode to like screen or overlay, and then you'd get the reflections of the ceiling and stuff showing on top of your screen. So it would look nicer. So that's a simple corner pin track. Ideally, you would shoot in a better environment, either pure, like if I would just put a pure white on there, full screen, it would have been better, etc. So that's the thing. That was just a quick one. You can see by that color how dark it was. So there you go. That's some stuff I shot down in Miami when I was at Landor. That house was in burn notice once. It was kind of fun. And someone one of the grips broke a $15,000 lamp. That was.
Did they pay you back for it?
Well, it wasn't our lamp. No, it was one of the people that own the house. So like, there's people that just rent their houses out for like shoots and stuff all the time, and it's just kind of weird. Like, I would never do that. I mean, like they did burn notice episodes in here, and you're like, really? Can you imagine the crew on it, like something like that? So we had gosh, for these shoots, I mean, we were a team of 5. Then with the other, everyone else, I mean, there were probably 25 to 30 people in the house. The craft services was the best I ever had in my life, though. It was delicious. But yeah, it was so crazy. And it's like, we just hear this big crash. We were on another floor. We were, thank God. So that was, yeah, nuts. But why wouldn't you remove that? I mean, it's just one of those things of like, just get that stuff out of there. If you know some crew of people's coming in with light stands and.
I think the better question is why did you spend $15,000 on
I don't know. Because, I mean, this, you can see from this home, that's probably not, well, yeah, I don't know.
It's probably not like an issue by that point.
Well, I don't know. If they're renting their house out to film shoots,
Oh, that's true.
I don't know. And they had like all these kids. It was a cool house, but whatever. Had one of those pools that like vanish into the horizon. And it full, yeah, that's the infinite pool that then the ocean was beyond that. It was pretty sweet. All right, so there's a phone track, simple phone track. Let's get into some keying. All right, so I'm gonna go ahead and kill my tracking folder. Just so we're nice and clean here. All right, now I'm gonna go ahead and import. Let's import another file. We'll grab the keying folder. All right, so we've got in here bad green. This is shot on a DV camera in 2000 on a turntable. That's Sally. She was an interior design kid. So this is my friend Kristen and I did a music video in 2000 when I was in grad school. So this was down in the photo studio. So they're weird green, or maybe we bought green. Did they even do green screen back then? I don't know if they did. No, I mean, I'm the first person that taught After Effects here.
Really?
Yeah, there was no, I had to develop all the curriculum as a grad student for the digital program for After Effects and 3D. I think we might have bought the green because it's not the right green. It's a little desaturated for green. So you can see this is like, we tried to light it, there weren't enough lights. So it was just not the best. That was a Lazy Susan she was standing on that we took apart and put a piece of like 4x4 in between so we could wrap a rope around it and pull the rope to make her turn. Like, it was as janky can be. But it kind of worked, and we got some okay keys. So this is just to show you a crappy key. Then this is a better shot key. This one I just found. But there you go. So you could motion track this as well if you wanted to put in a background. So you could motion track, stabilize that first, or motion track so your background moved with the camera, and then key it out after that, and then you've got your background moving with that plate. So that's how you would do that stuff. So just let's start with this guy because it's a nicely shot. Thing is, you want to get, whenever you're shooting green screen, light your screen as even as possible. It'll just make things better, and light it so it's not too overblown. Also, try and get your people as far away from it. If you can get it to be a little blurry, if you can use depth of field to get a little blur on your screen, that'll help because it's not going to see every wrinkle, every shadow, every weird little thing. Yeah.
I think a good thing to add right here is that you want your shutter speed to be pretty fast because otherwise you're going to go back and look at your footage and realize like a hand is blurring from the video because I made that mistake multiple times.
Yeah, I mean, and especially if you're doing, the problem is like DSLRs aren't the best, I mean, for this either because they're shooting in a 4:2:1, wait, no, let me see, 4:2:2 color space where you really want a 4:4:2 color space. So you just don't have as much colored information. You also don't want your people close to the green screen because green will spill on them. It's called screen spill. I mean, you might use blue too. Like if people obviously have to wear green clothes in your shot, then you're going to use a blue screen. If you get color spill, then you'll start to key, and you'll see some of that happening. So just a quick key. This should be a piece of cake. So let's go in and we'll do take our PXC Europa movie, make a new comp. I'll go ahead and bring this up. Set this to fit up to 100%. Key light is our keyer. I remember before when key light came, It was amazing. I had something from Pinnacle, well, before Pinnacle bought, shoot, what was it called? It was something Puffin. And there was a keyer that was really nice that I had bought separately that I used to use. So key light comes with everyone. So do key light 1.2. Here's where your screen color is. You grab it. Boop. There's your key. So if you want to see, there's your options. Your source alpha. There was not an alpha before. If you want to see your... Wow. Where's our screen mat? Is that going to do it? There it is. So we got a little gray in here, so we could adjust. If you adjust the gain, you can see what you get or don't get. So you're going to want to find that screen gain. But honestly, this will be pretty decent for this one. We could go with... try and do a little pre-blur, see if that helps us. But then down inside here, clip our blacks a little bit. See, that's coming from spill on him. There we can get a little bit more out of that. So changing our white clip, but let's make sure what it looks like, final result. Okay, that should be good. So now if we just take something else, go back to your project, just take the small blue turbulent rip. That's tiny, but we'll just scale it up. Now he's in front of a spooky, turbulent screen. What's going on? Don't go in there. I'll stop you at any means necessary. Ugh. All right, so that's Keen. All right, so there it is in full scale. So that's Keen with a nicely lit key, okay? With a crappy key shot on a TV camera, let's go ahead and do a bad green comp. So with this one, you can use multiple keyers on your thing, so you're not stuck with one. So obviously up here, we've got some issue here. This is a little blown out, it's a little hot, so that's kind of going to be hard for us too because we've lost, I mean, this is one we reshot this to get a better shot. But so this one, we could get a key here maybe, we can get a key here. Another thing you can do is use a mask to sort of get rid of what you need to key. So if we go here, all right, she's not turning that much. That's the widest there and the widest there. So if we go in here and we just go grab our pen tool with that selected, now all the rest with a mask, right? Everything else is going to be transparent. So let's go ahead and throw our small blue turbulent behind her. All right. So now we don't have to worry about this of keying this. So we've gotten rid of that. That's what's called, a lot of times they'll call it a garbage mat, because you're getting rid of all the garbage. So if you shoot a long shot on a green screen and you've got, you can actually see the edge of your screen and you see guys having lunch to the side of it or whatever's going on, just do a mat so that you just get rid of the garbage. That's a garbage mat. So now we can go in and use our keyer. Oh, back on bad green. So we'll go ahead and key light it. Go ahead, pick your key. Now this could be a blue screen, yellow screen, red screen, whatever you've got. Try and find something. Now you can see that's pretty noisy, and this has been compressed down from a larger file anyway, so we're not going to get a decent key. Now the problem is here, this is a perfect mask out, right? Because we've got the mat here. So that's going to be a perfectly clear thing. If we click off this, we're going to see all this noise in here. So that would be another way where you could go through. So we could try. Her arms are becoming transparent because of spill. So again, it's one of those things you can maybe try and use saturation up front, get some different things going. If we went ahead and let's get rid of that mask. So our mask is right down here. And again, you can animate your mask with keyframes just under your mask shape. So if you wanted to keep it really clean against her, so you didn't hardly have anything at all to do, we could start and go, get almost into a rotoscoping vibe where You know, we're getting as close to her as possible. You might want to add some points. You know, and this would be getting a little crazy, but if that's what you had to do, it's what you have to do. But this can get you a lot better key because now we can really just concentrate on what's closer to her. But this is such a crappy key, it's not going to help. So if I go back through here, hit reset, and we try a key just with what's closer. Let me bring this to full. So there that at least looks somewhat better. So that'll get us a little better, but then you'll have to go through. And again, this is so crappy, and that's really why I wanted to bring it in, that it was a pain. Like, we did all kinds of stuff. We had this over some real, like, cyberpunky background that was noisy, so it didn't really matter that much. But, I mean, she'll work. But you can see we're seeing a little blue through here. Most of this gets really dark. We'd have to animate that out, so that's an example. So for masks, so at this point, as she's coming around, we'll want to go ahead and go to our mask shape. So let's go back, set a keyframe, and then just wait and see. So if we wanted to bring this in because we don't want to bother with it, oops. All right, it'll set a keyframe for us because we already had one. I mean, here we could bring this one in. I mean, this was almost, that's more rotoscoping at this point. So here we need to nudge this guy out. And you'd have more points if you were really doing this. Or do a roto Bezier. Here we're getting too close to her arm. Lost some of her face there. Sorry, Sally. So again, animating mask shape, that might be a reason you'd want to do that if you've got something going on. All right, so that's sort of that example of getting that, but a noisy background will give you a crappy key. So if you can avoid that, you'll be in a much better shape. You can see how that blue is showing through her. So that's that. Simple keying. I think in the others, there's not really if you wanted to do, like, so this one, for example, let's just do this. There's a linear color key. This guy, just on a white background. Luckily, the white, even though it's black and white checked, that's not as white as that background. So we could go ahead in here. There's another keyer in here where we could say keying linear color key. That'll give us an OK. But we're going to be tight, so that's not the best. So you could do key light on that as well if we wanted to. But that's just another option. And then, but just to see the difference between key light. And you can, and there's all kinds of options in key light as far as edge color correction. So if you get a purple halo around because of your DV or whatever you're using, you can change the color and that type of thing. There's a lot of other plugins that are available to buy that are really great for keying. Like Ultimatte is a really nice one, and it gives you all kinds of different things. So if we did this guy and just keyed it. Where's our project? Very weird. That makes no sense to me. I don't know why we're not getting a key here. Interesting. All right. Well, I don't know why that's not working. I didn't try that clip. I just grabbed it before I came. So weird. All right. Well, he's gone. All right. So that's a little bit about keying. Just the big thing: light your backdrop really well, and then try and light your talent as well. All right. We just hit masks a little bit. So masks are objects that when you're on, let me go ahead and load in that folder, the matte folder. So I'm just go ahead and file, import. Let's grab matte. Oh, I had one for masks, but that's all right. Okay. So let's say there's a couple different ways. So we'll talk about mattes first. With a matte, you're basically using black and white or grayscale image to create transparency through which you'll see through. So if you think about an alpha channel, that is basically a matte as far as After Effects is concerned. I always refer to After Effects as Photoshop with a timeline. So most things you can do in Photoshop, you can find a way to do in After Effects, but in motion. So what we can do is if we take, for example, let's take this Alaska move, and we will drag it down and create a comp. So this is basically just a Febreze render. So if we do view, fit in, all right, so that's just a really quick, simple, hey, we need a Febreze render. Let's do a Febreze render. So what we'd want that transparent, right? So you could render it out with an alpha channel, bring that through. So that's basically, or you can render out with a ID tag on your object, an object ID out of Cinema 4D or whatever. So what I did is I did that, and I rendered out this guy. So Alaska Matte basically is just a black and white channel. So think of it as an alpha channel, and that's what Cinema renders out. Now up here there might be a little bit of gray because it is somewhat transparent. I don't know if I probably did an object IDs because I didn't want to mess with it. So there is some transparency to that plastic at the top. So depending if you're doing something with photorealism and you really want like something to, if you want it's against red, and since there is some translucency to that, it would bring some of that red through the plastic, and you want that to happen, there would be a little bit of a lighter or a darker gray up there that would allow more of that background to show through. But on this one, it's just pretty solid black. So, because I knew we were just going against motion graphics, we didn't want it to show up. So in this case, we have this movie as well. So if I bring this down, Alaska Matte, let me come back to the beginning so it goes where we want it. And I'll drop that on top. So on your toggle switches and modes, when you're in the modes mode, that's where you have your, always rasterize, or your 3D layers, or your motion blur. And if we hit modes, this is where we get track mats. So basically, a track mat could be an animated series of these. So originally I had them as a TIFF sequence so that you can bring in a TIFF sequence if it's numbered, and it'll bring it in as a movie clip. But it was a couple hundred, or I don't know, the whole folder went up to like 500 megs at that point. So I was like, I don't want to make these guys download that. So I just saved them out as MP4s. So when I render out a 3D, I always render image sequences. That way if something goes wrong, you can just start over where you stopped. It doesn't mess up your entire QuickTime. Also, you're not compressing into an MP4 or something, which causes noise. When you're keying, when you're doing alpha channels, all those type of things, you want the cleanest possible source. So it's kind of like a JPEG versus a RAW file. If you're taking a photo and you're going to do a lot of manipulation to it, you'd rather have a RAW file than a JPEG, right? Because the JPEG already has lost a lot of color information. It's the same thing. So always try and have your best source. So even if you're coming off your camera and it saved a really big file, if you can afford the space, instead of saving it down to a compressed format like an MP4 or an H.264, that'll just compress it again. So always try and keep it as nice as possible. This will still work fine, but it might not be as clean as the original. So when I've got my Alaska move and my matte, all you have to do is you put your matte, what you want to use a matte above, and then on the track matte for here, you say, okay, I'm going to use the alpha matte or the luma matte or the luma inverted matte. So if this was a movie that had an alpha channel in it, I could have just duplicated it above. Well, actually, it probably would have read it. That's one thing. But if you had a movie that had an alpha channel, you can always say use the alpha matte of that. But for this, there's not an alpha. Okay, so this thing doesn't have an alpha channel. If we look at what am I looking for? Oh, in here, sorry. So if we look at the main on interpret footage, it'll say whether or not it has an alpha, if it can find one. There's not one in here. So there's not an alpha channel. So even though it looks like an alpha channel being black and white, it's not an alpha. So it's not going to do that. So is that going to let me? Okay, cool. All right, so that's not the right one. So if we pull down here, luma matte. So it's using the luminance of that object or that image. So luma matte right here. All right, it's not what we wanted. So now we've got, this is transparent. So let's throw something behind it just so we can see what's going on. So we've got our elephant right here. Move him. So he's below. All right, so obviously that's backwards. That's not what we wanted, right? So let's go ahead and we can move that forward so we get a little more. So then let's say, all right, we've got, what's our last chance? Luma matte inverted. So basically, that's what we wanted. So now, it'll go through. So basically, what's black is transparent, and what's white is, yeah, for the, or creates transparency. No, what's white creates transparency. Let me say it backwards. So what's black will show the movie, what's white will drop out so you can see what's behind it. Right? So then that's our crazy Febreze African elephant adventure. Probably might need it there. It's going to... Oh, this little computer tries. I'm also on full screen, full too. So yeah, so that's a track matte. All right. It can also be a still. That's just to show it can be an animated thing. So if we took, let's say we got rid of this, and we took the elephant movie and made that the track matte, it's going to be the same thing. So then if we had another movie underneath, Los Angeles. I mean, this makes no sense, but it's just there. So at least there. All right. So you can use it as a matte or a mask. It's not a mask in After Effects, so it's a matte. So this guy, and you can use a still, like right here's a one that just says matte. So if we grab that instead, get rid of this, and we've got our elephant movie. Let's get rid of this Los Angeles. Oh, we'll leave that there, why not? Got our elephant movie, and we'll go through here. So again, just grab it. Oops, not blending mode. Track matte. Why is it not grabbing it? Oh yeah, sorry. There we go. So there's the elephant. Usually it'll do it automatically, but I was screwing around with them. So that guy, there's the elephant inside Matt in LA. So again, that's just using an image, black and white image. If it was grayscale, it would be slight, it would just be a variation of transparent through the scale of 256 levels of gray. So that's a matte. So your mask, we already kind of hit that. So a mask is created inside After Effects. So if I go ahead and get rid of this, and we'll get rid of this, and that should be fine. So if this guy, let me just scale him up. So a mask, if you've got your layer selected and you start drawing or you draw a shape, then that will give you your mask that way. So whatever you draw will create it there. You can go into your mask as far as feather the edge if you want that. So if we had, let's put LA back below him. So, you know, if you want that really exciting 1980s video effect, there it is. And your mask, you could do the shape over time, etc. So if you wanted this guy to, let's go to our elephant move, roll down, find the mask, roll down. Oops, sorry. And we could say mask shape. And if that was, you wanted that to, you know, appear or disappear, you've got your opacity settings, so you could fade in. It's a dream. You know, all this kind of thing. You can expand your mask if you wanted to change the shape of your mask. Again, it's just like we did before. Set your shape, move forward. You know, then you maybe grab this point. Bring it in, you've got your Beziers, and it'll morph in between. So kind of like a tween and flash. It'll find like its most simple way to get there. So if we bring our opacity back up, now that shape will change over time.